60 seconds. That's all it took. A 60-second video posted on tax day, and now a $6 billion skyscraper that was supposed to reshape the Manhattan skyline is sitting in a boardroom in Miami while a billionaire decides whether New York is even worth building in anymore. I'm Marcus, and this story is about to get a lot worse than the headlines make it sound. Because behind the viral clip and the political theater, there are 21,000 jobs, 2 historic churches counting on air rights money, 3 entire city blocks lined up for demolition, and a supply chain of construction workers, engineers, and fabricators who were told this project was a sure thing. None of them got a vote, none of them were consulted, and all of it traces back to one man standing on a sidewalk with his phone, pointing at a penthouse and calling out a name he probably should not have called out. So hit subscribe because this goes deep. Let's get into it. Let's set the scene. April 15th, tax day, New York City. The mayor's office posted a 60-second video on social media. The setting was 220 Central Park South, a luxury tower overlooking Central Park. Standing on the sidewalk outside was Zohran Mamdani, Democratic Socialist, 34 years old, barely 100 days in office. Behind him stood a 4-floor penthouse, 24,000 square feet, a property that hedge fund billionaire Ken Griffin bought in 2019 for $238 million, which at the time set a record for the most expensive home sale in American history. Mamdani looked into the camera. He reminded viewers he'd campaigned on taxing the rich. Then he delivered the punchline. Today we're taxing the rich. He pointed at the building, named Ken Griffin specifically, called the apartment an example of the richest not carrying their fair share. He was promoting a proposed pied-à-terre tax, an annual surcharge on luxury second homes worth more than $5 million, whose owners don't live full-time in the city. Governor Hochul backed the proposal. The video ripped through social media, nearly 50 million views. The mayor of the largest city in America standing outside one specific billionaire's apartment and calling him out on tax day. But here's where it gets interesting. 1 week later, an email hit the inboxes of every single employee at Citadel, one of the largest hedge funds on the planet. The subject line was Zohran Mamdani, and the language inside should concern every New Yorker, because Mamdani had picked a fight with the wrong billionaire. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who he just pointed at. Ken Griffin is the founder and CEO of Citadel. Forbes puts his personal net worth around $50 billion. He runs one of the largest hedge funds in the world, and he's a man with a very specific track record of how he responds to politicians who come after him. In 2022, Griffin moved Citadel's entire global headquarters out of Chicago. He walked away from Illinois after publicly calling out the state's taxes, its crime rates, its political dysfunction. He told Fox News he'd had 25 bullet holes in the front of his building. 2 colleagues had bullets fly through their cars. He packed up, relocated the whole operation to Miami, made Florida his primary residence. He didn't negotiate. He didn't threaten. He just left. And when he left, he took billions in economic activity with him. But here's the part that really matters. He never fully left New York. Citadel still had roughly 2,500 employees in Manhattan, and those employees were about to get a brand new home. In 2024, the Adams administration unveiled plans for 350 Park Avenue. Foster Partners design, 62 stories, roughly 2,600 feet tall. 1.8 million square feet of office space anchored by Citadel and Citadel Securities. Citadel alone would occupy 850,000 square feet, roughly half the building. This wasn't some small corporate renovation. This was a super tall skyscraper, a tower that, if built as planned, would rise 200 feet higher than J.P. Morgan's brand new headquarters at 270 Park Avenue. It would have been the tallest office building ever built on Park Avenue. The New York City Council approved the project unanimously, 48-0, not a single dissenting vote. In February of this year, Griffin exercised his option to take a 60% majority ownership stake in the joint venture. Construction was scheduled to begin in April. Demolition crews were lined up. 3 existing buildings on the block were slated to come down. A 30-story Vornado-owned office tower at 350 Park. A 23-story Rudin-owned building at 40 East 52nd. A 5-story office building at 39 East 51st. Contractors, vendors, demolition crews all lined up. And then weeks before the groundbreaking, Mamdani posted his 60-second video. It changed everything. Gerald Beeson, Citadel's chief operating officer, sent a company-wide email that the Wall Street Journal obtained. The language was deliberate. He wrote that the 350 park project, if they move forward, would entail more than $6 billion of spending. That conditional, if we move forward, that's corporate language for we might not. He called Mamdani's use of Griffin's name shameful. He said it showed ignorance and disdain toward the people actually contributing to the city's economy. And then he laid out the receipts. Over the past 5 years, Citadel's principals and employees have paid nearly $2.3 billion in city and state taxes. Not a lifetime. 5 years. Griffin personally has directed roughly $650 million in charitable donations to New York institutions. Nearly 200 Citadel employees sit on the boards of New York charitable organizations right now. The people Mamdani is publicly attacking are the exact people currently funding the programs he's promising. But the damage goes deeper than the corporate memo. Because the real cost of this isn't a spreadsheet. It's the people counting on this project. Imagine you're an iron worker in Queens, a steel fabricator in the Bronx, an electrician out in Long Island, an engineer who'd been assigned to 350 Park Avenue. For months, you had a job lined up. Weeks of work, maybe years. Maybe you told your family. Maybe you planned your winter around it. According to Citadel's own memo, the project was projected to create 6,000 construction jobs and support more than 15,000 permanent jobs in Midtown once it opened. That's 21,000 people whose plans are now sitting in the hands of a billionaire in Miami deciding whether the mayor's tax rhetoric makes the city worth investing in. And here's what nobody is connecting. The project didn't just involve Citadel. Real estate developer Vornado Realty Trust committed hundreds of millions into the joint venture. Rudin Management held a stake. Two of the most historic religious institutions in America, St. Patrick's Cathedral and St. Bartholomew's Church, sold $150 million in air rights to the project, money earmarked for restoring the landmarks. Money that was contingent on the tower actually getting built. So when Citadel says the project might not happen, it's not just a hedge fund's office plan going away. It's a cascade. The churches don't get their restoration funds. The developers lose their investment. The construction workers lose their jobs. The small businesses in Midtown that were counting on the foot traffic from 6,000 new office workers never see them arrive. And while all of this was happening, what was Griffin doing in Miami? Expanding. He scrapped the hotel component of his planned 54-story Brickell Tower and converted the entire building into 1.7 million square feet of standalone office space. He's now considering whether Citadel and Citadel Securities should take over the entire office component instead of leasing to other firms. The message couldn't be clearer. The investment that was supposed to go to New York is going to Florida instead. Miami is getting the skyscraper. Miami is getting the jobs. Miami is getting the tax revenue. And New York is getting a 60-second video. Now, here's the part that should anger you. Because when Mamdani was asked directly about the Citadel threat at a press conference, he didn't back down. He didn't apologize. He said that home, when it was purchased, was the most expensive home in the United States of America. That was his answer. When asked if he was concerned about losing 21,000 jobs and $6 billion in investment, the mayor pointed to real estate prices. Billionaire investor Bill Ackman publicly defended Griffin on X, warning that the mayor's approach could backfire. CNBC anchor Sarah Eisen pointed out that Griffin employs thousands in New York and demonizing him seems risky. Kevin O'Leary raised safety concerns about filming outside a private residence. President Trump took to Truth Social, calling Mamdani destructive. Political analyst J.C. Polanco said the campaign is over, you're a mayor, act like it. And Mamdani's response to all of it was silence or deflection. And here's the number the mayor's office does not want you to look at. Because this isn't a one-off feud between a mayor and a billionaire. It's a pattern that's been building in New York for years. Over the past decade, New York State has lost an estimated $111 billion in adjusted gross income to other states. More than 125,000 New Yorkers have relocated just to Florida, carrying roughly $14 billion in income with them. The city's share of the nation's millionaires dropped from 7% to 4%. The top 1% of New York earners, roughly 41,000 filers, pay more than 40% of all the city's income taxes. The top 10% pay about 2/3, which means if even a small slice of that top layer leaves, the revenue gap opens up fast, and it's already opening. The city currently faces a $5.4 billion budget deficit. Moody's shifted the city's credit outlook to negative. And if Mamdani's broader wealth tax falls in Albany, which is entirely possible, his administration has publicly warned the city will be forced to raise property taxes on everybody else instead. Every regular homeowner, every condo owner, every family with a brownstone in Brooklyn, they pick up the bill. So let's bring this all home. We started with a video. A mayor standing in front of a billionaire's penthouse, holding up his phone, recording on tax day. 60 seconds of content. One name called out, and now, a week later, a $6 billion redevelopment that would have reshaped the Manhattan skyline is sitting in limbo. 21,000 jobs in question. 2 historic churches counting on restoration money that may never arrive. 3 city blocks lined up for demolition with no clear timeline. A billionaire expanding his Miami office tower while New York watches. And a mayor who, when asked about all of it, pointed to real estate prices and moved on. Here's the bottom line. This fight isn't really Mamdani versus Griffin. It's policy versus math. You can tell the city's top 1% they aren't paying their fair share as loudly as you want. But when the 1% funds 40% of your income taxes, reality eventually wins the argument. The question isn't whether New York will lose more Ken Griffins, it's how many more videos it takes before the damage becomes permanent. And that's exactly why this matters to everyone watching, whether you live in Manhattan or somewhere else entirely. Because the same pattern is already showing up in California, in Illinois, in New Jersey. So I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you in a state watching the exact same playbook? Who's your Ken Griffin? Who's your Mamdani? Let's talk about it. Hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that actually affect your life. I'm Marcus. I'll see you in the next one.